I just never thought that experimentation is just about A/B testing. It's just about tests. I'm fatigued to talk about A/B testing and calculating p-values and looking at statistical relevance. It's way more to experimentation than that. It's a huge gap for innovation in the experimentation space. So when I took this opportunity to run and redo the experimentation services, the first thing that I did was to message Krasi and to tell him like we need to unify the efforts that the data science does with the ones that the experimentation team does.
Looking like a baddie, I show up and make them stop. Wanna know my name so badly, cause I run this whole block. Flip my hair, move my head, show the world I'm royalty. When I walk by, they be taking bows, cause they know I'm the queen, yeah.
This is Experimentation, the conference. This is my third year speaking, and for the first time, I'm not alone. And I'm here with my colleague Krasi from the data science team. And today we're going to talk about semantic textual analysis. And it's a mouthful. And we are already wearing the cyberpunk obligatory glasses to have this conversation because we're going to talk about AI, we're going to talk about machine learning, everything that is hot right now. But this is us. I am Juliana Jackson. I'm optimization and data strategist at MediaMonks, and my colleague Krasi, he's the data science team lead at MediaMonks. Krasi, I know I just dragged you into this like 20 minutes ago. How do you feel today?
I feel very well. I always love to say a few words about AI and specifically NLP, which is on top of my head in the past couple of months.
Cool. So the reason why we're doing this, like jokes aside and seriously, the reason why we're doing this presentation together is because me and Krasi are working on the same client for some time now. And we are in a process of helping this client and support them with actual qualitative research and qualitative analysis, and just moving a bit further from the classic GA4 and CRM and CDP numbers. So we're just trying to what we're going to present to you today is something that we've been working on, and I'm very excited to share with you. And we hope that this talk is going to inspire you to think outside the box as well. So the problem we're solving for here, we have this client, it's an enterprise client in the beverages industry, and they have a global presence. So they wanted to learn more about how their app users are interacting with their app. They have their app on iOS and on Android. And all the features that they try to release every month or now, they spend tons of money in innovating the app, and they want to understand like, okay, is this innovation, is this efforts that I'm doing, are they being translated to customer loyalty and customer satisfaction? So at MediaMonks, I actually run the experimentation team, and Krasi, as you know, is in the data science team. One opportunity that I had when I accepted to get on this role was to rethink the way we're doing experimentation in EMEA at MediaMonks. So I always, and this is probably gonna get me some hate, and Romul, if you're not hating, if you're sharing this on LinkedIn, I just never thought that experimentation is just about A/B testing. It's just about tests. I'm fatigued to talk about A/B testing and calculating p-values and looking at statistical relevance. It's way more to experimentation than that. It's a huge gap for innovation in the experimentation space. So when I took this opportunity to run and redo the experimentation services, the first thing that I did was to message Krasi and to tell him like we need to unify the efforts that the data science does with the ones that the experimentation team does.
This is Romo Santiago from Experimentation. Every week we share interviews with and conference sessions by our favorite conversion rate optimizers from around the world. So if you like this video, smash that like button and consider subscribing. It helps us a bunch. Now back to the episode.
And how was that, Krasi? Did you?
So far, a great success. I feel like those two teams were siloed in the past, and we have a lot to learn from each other. We in data science don't know a lot about business cases and what particular things businesses need to solve. And we know a lot about models. We know a lot about tests. We know a lot about p-values. We know a lot about natural language processing as well. But we lack client understanding. We lack business understanding, and we lack also some digital marketing understanding.
Yeah, so that's why it's amazing that we have this chance to collaborate on this client together. And as part of the new experimentation framework that we built here for EMEA, research and analysis are the first steps before we even think about how we're going to build the rest of the program. So in this experimentation phase, when we're doing a lot of research and analysis, we have been thinking about innovative ways and using machine learning and AI to help the client, make progress. So we have been thinking like where is like how we can do interviews, we can do surveys, we can do a lot of stuff. But we noticed that we were sitting on 500,000 reviews on the App Store and Google Store. So our client has an app that is present globally, and they have this numbers of reviews. So this is just basically free data that we have. And this is the voice of the customer data. So I was thinking, okay, Juliana, I definitely can go through these reviews myself and try to mark them as positive and negative and try to build a case around what's the voice of the customer data. But there has to be an easier way. So I remember that a few years ago, I had this YouTube video that I did with Millie Casey. She used to be the data science lead at Uber, but I think now she's at Google. And then I had also Mike Robbins from Snowplow, and we were talking about NLP, and we were talking about GPT-3 back then. Like it wasn't even cool. And we actually tested Hugging Face and other tools in that demo that we did. So I just like, my wheels started running. And first I went to Juliana, our senior director of data, and we tried to do this together. But then when I started collaborating with Krasi, it actually became way more. So at first thought, we had this sentiment analysis thing in our head, and this is how our journey started. And Krasi, like, would you want to share like what are the prerequisites that somebody, like, if you want to do, like, if you're listening right now and you are asking yourself, can I do sentiment analysis? Like, what would be those prerequisites, Krasi?
I personally think that everyone can do sentiment analysis. The availability of pre-trained models on large data sets make it easy for every specific client. It doesn't have to be an enterprise client. You can run, for example, Hugging Face model locally that has been pre-trained. It can also deliver very good results. You can run that on your own machine. You don't have to be in the cloud. You don't have to have a large cloud build to know a lot about continuous integration and deployment. It just works very simply. Actually, Hugging Face provides really good integration with Python. The functions are pre-written. It's just a couple of lines of code. I believe everyone can do it. The more customizable it gets, then we have a certain complexity. You have to do certain fine-tuning. You have to have a certain domain knowledge to pick the right model for the use case. And then you have to be mindful about the potential pitfalls because every model has such. I think, Juliana, you have a very good quote for models and when they're useful.
Yes, all models are wrong, but some are useful. Yeah. It's not my quote. I forgot who said it and it's embarrassing, but it's very true. But on large, like these are some prerequisites that we found specifically, as you will see here, the name of the tool called App Figures, which is a tool that this client that we're speaking about is using to collect the reviews. But it can be any tool that collects reviews, and you have to have secure access to this because you have to enable an API that feeds these reviews to where you obviously will work and process them and manipulate that data. And manipulate is a very ugly word, but that's kind of what it is. And obviously you need to be conscious of budget because with cloud things can become very expensive very quick if you're not careful. So it has to be some sort of hygiene when you're planning the project. Analysis environment, scope, of course, pain points, and goals. Like every type of research has to have goals. If a research doesn't have goals, it's that Cheshire Cat quote from Alice in Wonderland. If you don't know where you're going going everywhere. Like it's like sky is the limit. And I know because I get excited as fuck, and then I go and I message Krasi on Slack and it's like, can we do this? Can we do this? Because I'm like a kid in the candy store. So it's very important to have some sort of hygiene, and this is like the steps we define. the potential deliverables from sentiment analysis is like sentiment scoring, is topic key reports, is complete classification and mapping of sentiment and score and topic. But like I think what is missing here, Krasi, and maybe you want to hear, like, let's tell people what is sentiment analysis, because we didn't mention that.
So sentiment analysis has been around for maybe 5 decades. It's not a new thing. It's been there for a while, but certain developments in computing power, but also research in models have led to much wider adoption. And actually, we're seeing a lot of interest in the field lately, at least in the past 1 year, ever since GPT-3 becomes so successful and widely known. Sentiment analysis is essentially an NLP technique. It is used to provide two specific outputs. The first output is a sentiment score, and this sentiment score can help you understand whether a certain body of text, be it a review or something left on Amazon maybe, or something in a call center, could be a lot of things. This analysis can help you understand whether this thing is negative, neutral, or positive. Pretty simple. And the other output is the strength of that opinion, because you could also have positive opinions that are not so strong, maybe. The probability of them being very positive is not so high, maybe, because people were expressing different points in the opinion. And this is making the interpretation easier, right? You have to understand whether people are putting a lot of expression into a review, and you need to understand whether that review is positive, neutral, or negative.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, if you have only 20 reviews, you can kind of do that with your own self. But sentiment analysis is not, as Krasi said, it's not limited to just reviews. You can basically, it's just analyzing any type of digital text. It could be all your customer support chats in the last 5 years. Let's say you want to analyze that textual data and understand like what are the main complaints of the customers in the last 5 years or 1 year or 2 years. And by analyzing their responses or their queries, you can understand the magnitude of how important that issue is for them. Because the cool part about sentiment analysis is it can also, detect that. But what the funny part is that we started with the sentiment analysis, but we ended up like a kid again in the candy store. So upon auditing the client's data infrastructure, data quality, of course, we found out that sentiment analysis is just one step off of a bigger project. So before you even start thinking about sentiment analysis, the most important part is to audit the current client's data infrastructure, because it's very likely that if you don't do that, you might, start the project and find yourself in the middle of the project that you cannot deliver, and you don't want to do that. So this data infrastructure, and we're going to show you how it looks in the next slides. But we found out that this is just a step. And initially, this name of the talk was sentiment analysis, but that's why it changed. Because, and we talked to our colleague from our global data science team, Arman, and thank you, Arman, for this, if you're watching. Basically, what we will show you next is something called semantic analysis of text, right? Textual semantic analysis, which is basically just a process to understand, natural language, because NLP stands for natural language processing. So when you see NLP in our slides, this is what we're talking about. So this semantic analysis is just basically looking at natural language like text and extracting information such as context, such as emotions, such as sentiments from unstructured data. So things like reviews, things like videos, things like images are called unstructured data types. There is structured data and unstructured data. The data that we will work right now and usually you use for this type of analysis is unstructured. So what and correct me if I'm wrong here, Krasi, but this process helps you transform unstructured data into structured data.
Pretty much so. There is actually a use case that can help extract certain entities from unstructured body of text and populate, for example, a CRM system. You can extract locations, you can extract some personal identifiable information maybe, although everyone should be careful with this.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Unless
But
you're allowed to.
unless you're allowed, yeah, get consent. But in semantic analysis, you can actually have a lot of use cases, and everything is business specific. Right
Yeah.
now, in the brilliant Hugging Face community, you can find a model that pretty much does whatever you want it to do.
But always be, and thank you for mentioning this, always be careful about privacy. And if it's like, for instance, first party data, so data that customers willingly share with you, so that would be the customer support data that does have personal identifiable information. So you have that data because customers shared it with you, and because they're your clients, you have the right to have that data. But be very careful when you're using any type of tool where that data would be outputted. So that's when it's probably safer to use it on a private secure cloud, or on your own machines, or just don't go out there and try random. Don't put your client data into random GPT-3 API, whatever plugins, because that's a breach and is very dangerous. So always be very careful about this. So Krasi, we were talking about the infrastructure. Like, I feel like we've been preparing for this time. So do you want to go through the slide? The
Yes,
scary slide.
it's not so scary. I have a lot of favorite things here on that slide. I should start by saying that everything that we usually do happens in the cloud. In that case, the analysis happens on Google Cloud, and we utilize two of my favorite products, which are Vertex AI and BigQuery. Although I also love Cloud Functions very much. Um, as you can see, the process is pretty simple. It's just 4 steps. You collect the data, you transform it, you analyze it, and then the activation happens. The activation probably is the most difficult part. And
Yeah.
Juliana is here to talk about activation, but I'm going to just explain a bit what's happening in the first 3 steps. So we pretty much collect data through API. It's automatable. If you follow best practices, it's going to run properly without so much human effort. After the data is extracted, we put it into a certain format in a certain storage folder, and then the analysis is pretty much done using either natural language API. This is a product by Google. Amazon offers similar products in the AWS suite. I believe Azure also, although I'm not an expert in Azure. For more customizable things, we could also use a model that is found in the Hugging Face community. As I previously said, there are tons of models. Depending on the use case, you can go very wild. So this is pretty much it. I would like to say a few things that you probably can't see on the slide. So for security and compliance reasons, we would like the client data not to leave the cloud. This is particularly important. And we should also be mindful about not supplying any PII to the model. This is pretty important. Google offers a pretty cool product called the Data Loss Prevention API. It allows customers to essentially filter such information and hash it. By hash it, I mean make it not identifiable. So no data breaches and data leakage occurs. This is pretty important. And in the final layer, the activation, I believe there is sky is the limit, I would say. You can do a lot of use cases there.
Yeah, and for specifically this use case with the client, what we're trying to do right now is, first of all, understand the customer needs, the unmet needs, the type of complaints that they have, because we want to help the client be able to prioritize the way they release features, the way they do different fixes, the way they they have a backlog, obviously, of things that they need to fix in the product team. So understanding, like the amplitude and the magnitude of the issues that clients mention and the occurrence of those, they can have some sort of prioritization model that helps them understand what is the best way further based on how clients react to that. So for instance, if you have like multiple app releases, you can check how each app release from each year performed in terms of sentiment, and see if that the issues that you had on the previous app release are met in the new one, and see like if you probably haven't solved the same problem for the last 20 app releases that clients are still complaining about. Secondly, we are looking at A/B testing, and the way we will do it is by obviously collecting this evidence first. It's very, very important for us to have clear understanding of the customer journey, and we are doing that also through with the use of data science. But one thing that is very important here is seeing the context around the customer journey. Like it's very easy to use quantitative data to create a funnel and see, like what are customers doing based on the events and the actions that they take on the website that they're tracked. But having this layer of context that comes from qualitative data can help us build very powerful hypotheses and do very risky tests and meaningful changes that can actually help the client learn something, rather than just testing a random ass button color. Like that wouldn't help much. So this can actually help you close that gap that you need to get to do more innovative and more meaningful changes. And as Tan Wesseling always says, we're in the business of better decision making. So this type of analysis, before you even start thinking about this, before you even get to the ideation phase, can be can give you enough evidence and data to make the right decisions. And the third part is obviously we're interested in post-purchase, and I wouldn't be the CLV lady if I wouldn't think about retention and customer lifetime value. So all of this data help us build very personalized post-purchase experience, post-download experience that can help us show the client like what are the best avenues, when is the best time to reach out, when is the best time to activate, when are you about to lose a customer based on like different topics and different segments and magnitudes that we will get. So this activation part, as Krasi said, is the hardest part, but it's going to be very meaningful because it's fueled by evidence and not just us guesstimating thinking or following best practices that we read on the internet about, oh, let's do a test. So we were talking about the natural language processing part, the NLP. This is something that comes up a lot because text is natural language. So basically, if you want the most basic explanation, when you hear NLP, just think about text. Natural language is basically just text. So Krasi, what does the NLP API help us with in this project right now? Like, what can we get out of it?
Well, generally, the NLP API can do 4 things. I've listed them here on the slide. The first thing is the sentiment analysis, which we discussed already. The second thing is entity recognition, and it provides the technique to extract certain high-level and well-known entities, such as public figures, landmarks, or common nouns, and to basically take these outputs and document them. I would give you an example. You're interested to understand restaurant reviews for certain location. When you make a request to that API, in the output, you can read the city. You can do that at scale. You can input maybe tens of thousands of restaurants in many cities all over the world. And this can help you understand in which city the restaurant was. It could save you a lot of time, but it's not very customizable. If you have very domain specific or very technical topics, then you would need to use something more customizable and possibly fine-tune it. The third thing is pretty interesting. It's entity sentiment analysis. So we spoke about sentiment analysis, but it gives you an overall score. It gives you an overall score of the review that is between -1 and 1. This thing is more granular. It can identify certain entities in the text, and it can give sentiment to these entities. Like in one review, you can speak about many things. You can speak about the good and the bad. For example, in the case, let's say, of earbuds, you can speak well about the connectivity, and this can classify the sentiment towards connectivity as a good one, but you can speak bad about, for example, noise cancelling. And this technique would help you understand very granular entities and the sentiment towards it. The third thing is also interesting. It's more linguistic thing. It can help you structure text, divide it into sentences and tokens. I believe there are a lot of good use cases for using a syntactic analysis, but so far in marketing, we haven't actually used it. Although I'm looking forward to the future, and I hope that we'll find a very good use case for it.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. And I think also one thing that we can get like some key terms here. So can we define for everyone watching or listening what is a topic in this context?
A topic essentially is an entity. It's, let's say, a word or a sequence of words that has a certain frequency of occurring within a text. Usually, to identify topics in the text, you need to have labeled data. You need to have, essentially, in the most ugly way, you would need to give hand labels to data, like tell this is the Eiffel Tower, this is a restaurant, this is whatever. But we have now pre-trained models, and we have zero-shot classification, and these things have been trained for us, and the models are already there. We can supply topics as essentially, imagine it as a list of things. Like you're interested to learn more about Bluetooth, for example, or restaurant tables whatsoever. You can supply that as input, and potentially a zero-shot model can help you, can give you a probability of this topic occurring in the review. To your question, Juliana, what is exactly a topic? I don't have a scientific answer for that, but the practical answer would be something that has business value, something that is defined by the people who work with the app or in marketing every day, and it is usually something that is important to consumers, since we are talking about marketing.
Yeah. So basically, if you know from based on all your interactions with your customers that you have issues with I don't know, payment methods in your app or in your tool, or you have issues with if you're selling, for instance, if you have like a trial type of subscription and then you want to upgrade to a paid account, and you know that it's an issue in the process because of your tech stack, you can actually look for trial as a topic in all the customer support chats to see how many times the name trial came up there. But it can also be like trial upgrade, which is more specific, like people that were on trial and they were trying to upgrade to a paid type of subscription. So that would be what would be, I guess, like a topic. But what it doesn't help us with is with performing complex language and understanding like very specific things. Is limited to more common and widely known concepts, and it cannot generate or create new content. So this is not the type of generative type of AI or machine learning and all this shit that everyone is talking about. So this is not the case here. So this is more like a descriptive type of analysis than a generative type of analysis. And Krasi, like this is like something that I'm very excited about, and this like first time heard here at Experimentation, the conference. This is the first time we actually talk about this in public. After myself and Krasi and Gonza in our team have been doing this work on auditing the data, putting our brains together and looking at the type of content we need to deal with, we understood that there are 3 big steps that needs to happen, and I will let you, Krasi, talk about more about this just to give a general idea. But this is how us at Media Monks are doing this, and this is just it's a very specific Media Monks process. So and this is the first time again we're speaking about it. So it's in 3 steps. You first have to understand, then you have to classify, and then based on the information that the model understands and classifies, you can predict different things. So this is how we are doing this. And Krasi, the stage is yours. Like, how do we do this, Krasi?
Yeah, so as you said, there are 3 stages, but actually there is a 4th stage. There is a 0 step. We start always by running an audit. We need to understand the data first. We need to understand the data sources, and we need to understand the business case behind this a little bit before we actually develop a plan. So we start usually by running an audit, and this audit can help us understand, do we have enough sufficient sample size? Do we have a very specific business need that we need to address? Do we have a sufficient number of reviews incoming per week or per month? We also need to understand what's the average rating. This is not sentiment. And since we're talking about app stores, everyone is familiar that you can give actually rating to apps. We analyze that rate, understand what's the consumer feeling towards the app. Although I believe this rating is to some extent biased, because people usually leave reviews or ratings when they're pissed or when they're super happy with something. So there is some inherent bias in this. But this also can help us understand how are things different from, let's call it, industry average. We have certain benchmarks, we run this analysis, and it helps us understand whether a specific problem is more important for a client than it is for the industry. And this helps us shortlist the models that we're going to use. So knowing this from the audit, we jump to the 1st step, which is sentiment analysis, and we analyze essentially all of the reviews, and we start mapping the sentiment score to specific things. This could be app version, this could be point in time, it could be a time series chart. Imagine it a line going from 2010 to nowadays, and you can see how specific, how sentiment towards the app is changing over time. I believe this is pretty important for the product team, also for the developers, and for everyone in the business. And then knowing what's the sentiment towards the app and how is it's changing over time, how is it dependent on other factors, we develop more specialized, more fine-tuned, more precise use cases. In this case here, we have 2 things. The first thing is complaint classification, because when you develop an app, I guess I'm not an app developer, but people are facing different problems across the journey of deploying and maintaining an app. You're facing different problems. You might face problems with logging, you might face problems with payment, for example. And this complaint classification is helping us to understand which pain points are particularly important, which pain points are affecting the sentiment, and which pain points are probably having a negative impact on your brand, because it might be very annoying for a consumer to do some action on an app, and this can have a negative effect on the overall business. Like, you could be so pissed with an app that you're never going to buy from company X, for example. Then there is unmet needs classification. So the first custom analysis helped us understand the pain points. The second analysis is going to help us how, after fixing those pain points and paying attention to them, how we can make that rating grow long term. Maybe there is nothing wrong with the app. Everything is working as fine as it can, but people are expecting new things from the app, and this can help the developer team and also the product team get those insights and start thinking about new features, add those features to sprints, and make that a feature available to consumers, which can have a business and a monetary value in the long term.
Yeah, and also, like, to reiterate, because again, this is an experimentation conference, all these steps that Krasi just explained are parts of a whole research and analysis methodology. And it's very important that you go through these steps, because these steps are going to give you the right data to make, the appropriate tests, to make the appropriate experiments, to make the appropriate changes in your app. So this is a very big chunk of the whole program. And dare I say that this is the most important one, because this research that you do can give you like guidelines for how to move for the rest of the program and how you can help that client make progress. So like this research part is what is staging, setting the stage for innovation in the future. And I know it might sound like, oh my God, this data science and so on, but the truth is, these things right now are very mainstream. They're closer than ever, and there's so many possibilities of you being able to just implement this right away, because as Krasi said, there are tools that have these models pre-trained. So figuring out how to adapt this to your business case after you perform audits, after you review your infrastructure, these are things that you can plug right away if you are sitting on a lot of data and you want to review that data in a fast way rather than having to go through all of them. So don't get scared, because it's not just, it's not like a thing that it's hidden behind very closed, doors. Like things like this can be maybe like $50-$60 per month based on how large your project is. So it's not that expensive as you would think. Of course, it's a big fucking, it depends. Because if you are, I don't know, huge company, like, I don't know, like if you're Facebook, well, good luck. But if you're like a mid-sized enterprise company, and in our case, for 500,000 reviews, we started with, I think, approximately maybe like 2,000 in total, roughly. If I think about all the countries that we started with, we are around $50 to $60 per month to do all this stuff. So it's not that expensive. You just obviously need to make sure that you build the project properly. So because we're getting close to the end, let's give these people actual example of how this works. So this is an actual review that I found on Amazon about Apple AirPods, and I have the URL of the review here in case you guys think that I made this shit up. I didn't. So let's go through the review. So the reason why we chose specifically this review is because it's not positive, but it's not negative either. So we're trying to give the machine something that has good things and bad things in them, but the way its position is close to positivity and neutrality. So we want, instead of showing you like a very classic example, like, oh, your app is shit, or oh my God, I love your app, let's give you something more complex that has nuances in the language. So basically in this review, it's actually very funny because the person that wrote it said the good and the bad. So he's very specific. So the topics that we were able to identify here were noise canceling, it was battery, it was connectivity, and I think it was one more, maybe Bluetooth, the other one that we thought about, things that we know that normally happens with AirPods. Everyone is fucking losing them. They're always not charging. They always don't connect. So Krasi, show us what the machines are telling us about this review.
Can we go to the next slide? Yeah, so in that case, we used a model that is available in the amazing Hugging Face community. It's a Deep Bertha V3 model. It's been trained on 3 data sets. And what we did, essentially, and this use, you can go on huggingface.co, find the model. In that case, we choose a pre-trained zero-shot classification model. And we actually copy-pasted the review. We found possible topics that we can search for that might be important from a business perspective. We just hit compute, and sorry, I'm talking about a different use case. This is sentiment.
No, that's fine. It's this and this. So Krasi said first we look at the sentiment, because we wanted to make sure that we are able to detect, like if it's positive, if it's neutral or negative. So what we did here, we noticed that Hugging Face detected both positive but both neutral and negative. And this is very interesting because if you guys we go a slide back, we see that this is a 3-star review. So it's not a bad or good one. It's somewhere in the middle. It's somebody that's not extremely dissatisfied, but also like they don't hate their guts. So this is a more tricky type of language. So what we were able to do in the first step is to identify that this is overall a positive review, because the probability here is closer to 1. And if you paid attention to our presentation earlier, you would know that 1 indicates positivity, 0 indicates neutrality, and -0 and downwards, actually, it's negativity. So in this review, the machine was able to detect the positive magnitude and of the text, but also the neutral one, but also the negative, because there are words like bad, there are words like fault, which are like negative words. So imagine that you're doing this on scale for 500,000 interviews, and you are able to visualize this. This is very, very powerful. So Krasi, to your point, what we were the second part of it, which is the one Krasi was talking about, is this one that is using the 0-shot model, which enables the classification of data from the specific model. So yeah, Krasi, like what did we find here?
As you can see in the outputs, we have found these supplied list of topics: connectivity, Bluetooth, and battery, and there is a probability that this topic is present in the review. This can help us identify the pain points or the unmet needs. As you can see, the model gives a pretty high probability for connectivity being present in the body of text, and not so high for Bluetooth, battery, or noise cancelling. If you read the review and start noticing certain patterns, that probably this review is all about Bluetooth and the model is not performing well on that text, this is a good sign that you might need a fine-tuned model. And what is a fine-tuned model? You essentially take a pre-trained model and you further retrain it on a specific labeled text. You can use a text that is fully labeled, for example, a training data set, and you have labels for every review saying, look, this has connectivity, Bluetooth, and battery. But you can also use a technique called weak supervision that can help you achieve this purpose with much less labeling and much less manual effort. So what we do after recording the output, we usually store the output in a database, and then we make something with the output, be it a dashboard or a time series visualization, or possibly we can also plug these insights into another model.
And imagine you're planning your next release and your next feature, and you do this over so many reviews or testimonials and customer support chats, and you see that connectivity is something that is like 50% in all your interviews or reviews. That means that there's like a strength on this specific topic, and this is where you should, dig deeper. So what this type of analysis does is it just gives you clarity on the things that you should be focusing on. So what do we do with this, right? Like, there's a lot of shit you can do with this for sure. You can do things like identify trouble vocabulary. Like if your customers are using your jargon. So for instance, is that brand that I love a lot called Pit Viper, that they're selling shades, and they have a specific vocabulary, you can do the sentiment analysis because you can input those specific vocabulary words that you have, and to identify if customers use that language, like if they're using the same language that you're using. You can, if you're, for instance, looking at search queries, you can determine if the campaign words are used in those search queries. You can, fuel your experimentation programs. You can help your team prioritize feature development, improvement, backlogs, on-site search, site search on steroids. If you do, if you have like obviously a good practice on search, and you have a good, search console data, there's a lot of things you can do with that as well. Obviously, you can show how sentiment evolves over time. You can even go deeper to look at how sentiment evolves per app release, or per website release, or for different pages, or for different products. Like the sky is the limit. Discover correlation between the sentiment in reviews and the keywords that are used to find the website. So for instance, let's say a lot of your reviews are telling you like, F you, you're a scam. And then you see that most of your search score is this company a scam? And that happens a lot, because if you just look for a company for the first time, if you look at the first searches that appear in Google, you will see that people researched for this before. So doing this type of sentiment analysis, you can see if that issues actually come internally from your customers versus just random people on the internet. Does this correlation affect impressions and click? Are the naysayers the ones that click on the website and perform different actions? Is negative sentiment impacting purchase and cart abandonment? That's a huge one. Does it affect customer lifetime value? Can you use this insights to improve your customer lifetime value? So there's so many things you can do. And we are super happy to have shared all of this stuff with you today. I hope, like this can give you some ideas on how to do more in your program. And again, like if you have the opportunity to work and to be in a company that you have access to people in data science or in the data team, try to work with them versus trying to silo your program just to doing tests, just to doing surveys, just to doing interviews. Like there's so much you can do by not limiting that, because experimentation is just another form of data activation. The data activation part can be fueled by real evidence by using all these tools instead of just limiting yourself to that. And obviously, Krasi, like, look at us, a data scientist with a strategist enter the bar. It's like, so Krasi, I hope you had a good time sharing this with me. I hope everyone enjoyed it. If you have any questions, you can connect with me and Krasi on LinkedIn. Unless you want to sell us some shit, please don't. If you are working for a company and you would like to do this inside your company, also feel free to reach out to us. We can help you at MediaMonks with this and adapt it to your own business, to your own context, to your own unit economics, and help you start with this today. Krasi, it was a pleasure, my friend.
It was a pleasure indeed.
Thank you. See you guys. I see you guys on the internet. And it's a wrap. And Romeo, you should probably delete this because I don't know how to stop the recording. Okay, that's it.
This is Romo Santiago from Experimentation. Every week we share interviews with and conference sessions by our favorite conversion rate optimizers from around the world. So if you like this video, smash that like button and consider subscribing.